The gathering storm. The Galactic Council's chambers thrummed with tension as the most influential species in the galaxy gathered. The Council was not a mere assembly. It was a collection of diverse races, each representing a different corner of the universe, each bringing their own strengths and histories. Today, however, all their vast power and influence felt impotent in the face of a new, unforeseen threat. At the heart of this gathering was Turkin, a ruthless warlord whose empire had expanded across multiple star systems. His ruthlessness had earned him the reputation of a conqueror unlike any other, one who would stop at nothing to grow his empire. But now, his gaze had fallen upon a small, seemingly insignificant planet, Earth. Despite its isolation, Earth was far from unknown to the Council. Humanity, in its short time among the stars, had made a profound impression. The humans had displayed an adaptability and resilience unlike any species the Council had encountered before, and although Earth was still a young world, the potential it held was undeniable. It was this potential that had the Council worried. They had heard the warnings. Many of them had come from Praxis, a veteran diplomat with a reputation for seeing threats before they'd fully manifested. The warlord Turkin, they feared, would see Earth as nothing more than another conquest, unaware of the danger that lay in challenging humanity. The humans are unlike any other species we've encountered, Councillor Vraxis said, standing before the assembly. We must intervene before Turkin makes a mistake. His arrogance could very well be his undoing. The Council deliberated, the tension palpable in the air. It was unanimous. A delegation would be sent to warn Turkin of the grave mistake he was about to make. The mission was risky, but it was the only course of action. Earth was a planet that could not be ignored or underestimated, not by Turkin, and not by anyone in the galaxy. The delegation was chosen swiftly: diplomats, military advisors, and strategists, each chosen for their experience with Turkin's empire. Leading the group was Vraxis himself. As a seasoned diplomat, he had faced down threats like Turkin's before. But as he prepared for the journey, a feeling of dread settled in his chest. This mission was different. This warlord was different. There was something about Turkin's recent victories that left a bad taste in his mouth. As the delegation set off for Turkin's capital world, Vraxis could. The fortress of Turkin. The journey through space was long, but the weight of the mission made every moment feel even more drawn out. The delegation sat in silence, each member lost in their own thoughts, preparing for what was to come. For Councillor Vraxis, this mission had been the culmination of a lifetime of work. Years spent negotiating peace, diffusing intergalactic tensions, and avoiding wars that could have destroyed entire star systems. He had faced dangerous situations before, but none like this. Turkin wasn't just another warlord. He was a force of nature, unstoppable and relentless. To face him was to test everything humanity had worked to protect. As the ship approached the capital world of Turkin's empire, the delegation felt a strange sense of foreboding. They had crossed into enemy territory, a place where Turkin's iron rule was felt in every aspect of life. The sky above the planet was clouded with the smoke of warships. The air was thick with the weight of tyranny. The planet's surface revealed a stark contrast to Earth's diverse, life-filled landscapes. There were no lush forests, no oceans teeming with life. Instead, the ground was pockmarked with craters and jagged rocks, a barren landscape that spoke volumes about Turkin's brutal conquest of the planet. Turkin had claimed this world long ago, and now it was the heart of his empire, an empire built on fear and destruction. When the delegation's ship descended to land, they were greeted not by a welcome party, but by a squadron of heavily armed soldiers. Their armor glinted coldly in the light of the alien sun, their weapons as imposing as their presence. Each soldier wore a black helmet that obscured their features, adding to the sense of menace that permeated the air. The soldiers were silent, their eyes cold and emotionless, as they ushered the delegation off the ship and towards the towering fortress that stood ahead, a monument to Turkin's unyielding will. The fortress itself was a sight to behold. It rose high into the sky, its spires cutting through the clouds like the claws of some great beast. The architecture was alien and imposing, built from materials that gleamed with an unnatural sheen. But it wasn't just the size and grandeur of the structure that made it intimidating. It was the symbols of conquest that adorned every surface. The banners of fallen empires, the skulls of defeated species, the relics of countless wars. This was a place that had been shaped by violence, a place where only strength could survive. Inside the fortress, the delegation was led through narrow, darkened halls. Every step seemed to echo with the weight of history written in blood and conquest. The walls were adorned with grotesque trophies, the heads of once proud leaders, weapons taken from worlds now subjugated under Turkin's rule. As they passed by, Vraxis couldn't help but feel a pang of disgust. These were not the spoils of war to be celebrated. These were the remnants of lives extinguished by the ambition of a single being. Finally, they arrived at the throne room. The doors creaked open, and the delegation stepped inside. The vast chamber was dimly lit, the only source of light coming from a pulsing glow emanating from the heart of Turkin's throne. It was an object of terrifying beauty, carved from the bones of a long-extinct species. It looked like a macabre work of art, a testament to the warlord's twisted sense of power. At the far end of the room, Turkin sat upon his throne, his cold yellow eyes fixed on the delegation as they entered. His presence was overwhelming, like a dark cloud that suffocated everything around him. The room seemed to shrink in his presence, as if the very air was bending to his will. He was a giant, towering over those before him, his body encased in black, battle-worn armor. The armor had clearly been forged in the fires of many wars, its surface scarred and battered from countless battles. He exuded an aura of ruthless authority, and as his eyes locked with Vraxis, it was clear that he saw the diplomat not as a threat, but as something beneath him. "You come to deliver another weak plea for peace." Turkin's voice rumbled through the room, dripping with disdain. His words were not a question. They were a statement of fact, as if he already knew what the delegation was here for. "You waste my time, counselor." Vraxis took a deep breath and stepped forward, his calm demeanor in stark contrast to the warlord's fiery presence. His heart raced, but he knew he had to remain composed. "We come not with pleas," Vraxis said, his voice steady. "We come with a warning. The humans of Earth are not to be underestimated. They are young, yes, but they are far more resourceful and resilient than you may realize. Their world may seem insignificant to you, but it holds a power that could disrupt the balance of the entire galaxy. You would be wise to reconsider your course of action." Turkin leaned back in his throne, a cruel smile creeping across his face. "Humans? A primitive species barely capable of space travel. You insult me, Vraxis. You come to me, pleading on behalf of a species that couldn't even defend themselves from a small invasion, let alone withstand an empire like mine. Do you really think they pose any threat to me, or to my empire?" Vraxis stood his ground, refusing to be intimidated by the warlord's dismissive attitude. "They are not like other species you have conquered. Humans are adaptable. They learn quickly. They have overcome challenges that would have obliterated lesser species. Earth is not a target you should pursue. You underestimate their potential, and that will be your undoing." The warlord's laughter filled the room, cold and cruel. "I have crushed every species that has dared to defy me, counselor. Earth will be no different." Vraxis didn't flinch. "You may succeed in attacking Earth, but the cost will be far greater than you realize. The humans have allies, some of them, right here within the Council itself. To underestimate them will be your greatest mistake." At the mention of the Council, Turkin's demeanor shifted slightly. His eyes narrowed, and for a moment, there was a flicker of something darker in them. But he quickly dismissed it, laughing again. "The Council. You think I fear the Council. They are weak. They cannot stop me. No one can. Vraxis' mind raced, calculating his next words carefully. He knew Turkin's arrogance could be his greatest vulnerability, perhaps. But if you choose to ignore us, know this: Earth is not as isolated as you think. The humans have proven time and time again that they can rise against impossible odds. I urge you to reconsider, Turkin. The consequences of your actions may not be what you expect. Turkin's expression hardened, his eyes flashing with anger. He stood up, towering over Vraxis, and the room seemed to pulse with his dark energy. Enough, counselor. I have heard enough. Earth will fall, just like every other world that stands in my way. With that, the meeting was over. The delegation was escorted from the throne room, but Vraxis couldn't shake the feeling that they had failed. They had warned him, but Turkin's mind was set. Earth was in danger, and it was up to the humans themselves to prove their worth. As they left the fortress, Vraxis' thoughts were heavy. The warlord had ignored their warnings, but there was something else, a sense that Turkin had not fully understood the power that Earth held. The humans were no longer the primitive species Turkin had dismissed them as. The warning ignored. The delegation's departure from Turkin's fortress was a quiet one. The tension that had filled the throne room still lingered in the air, like a thick fog that refused to lift. Vraxis couldn't shake the sense of defeat that had settled deep within him. They had done everything they could, but the warlord's arrogance was a force to be reckoned with. Despite their best efforts to warn him, Turkin had refused to listen. His mind was made up, and he would not be swayed. As the delegation made its way back to their ship, Vraxis kept his thoughts to himself. He knew that the fate of Earth now rested in the hands of the humans themselves. The warning had been issued, but whether or not it was heeded was out of his control. Still, the diplomat couldn't shake the feeling that they had failed. The stakes were higher than ever, and now it was too late to turn back. The ship ascended from the surface of Turkin's capital world, the black expanse of space stretching out before them. Outside the ship's windows, the gleaming lights of the warlord's fortress grew smaller and smaller until they were swallowed by the vastness of the galaxy. But for Vraxis, the vision of the throne room, with Turkin's mocking eyes fixed on him, remained seared into his mind. He replayed their conversation over and over, each exchange of words echoing louder in his mind. The humans had been dismissed, belittled, and even mocked by the warlord. Turkin had laughed at the very notion that Earth could stand up to his might. But what Turkin didn't understand was the unique quality that set humans apart from every other species the galaxy had encountered. Humanity wasn't just resilient, it was inventive, creative, and capable of adapting in ways that no one else could. But the warlord's underestimation of Earth's potential was only one part of the problem. The deeper issue was Turkin's inability to see the bigger picture. He was blinded by his own arrogance, unable to recognize that the humans could not only defend themselves, but could also challenge him in ways that his empire was ill-equipped to handle. Are we certain there is no way to change his mind? A voice interrupted Vraxis' thoughts. It was Janar, one of the military advisors who had accompanied the delegation. His voice was filled with concern, but also a sense of frustration. He had been with the council for many years and had seen his fair share of military operations, but this mission was different. They had come to warn a powerful warlord, only to find themselves dismissed as if they were nothing more than an inconvenience. Vraxis sighed, looking out the ship's window. I fear we've done all we can. Turkin won't listen to reason. His mind is made up, and he is too stubborn to see the consequences of his actions. Then what happens now? Janar pressed, his voice rising slightly. Vraxis turned back toward him, his expression hardening. Now we prepare. The humans will have to defend themselves. We can only hope that they are ready for what's coming. The rest of the delegation remained silent, each member lost in their own thoughts. They were all too aware of what was at stake. The galaxy had never faced a threat like Turkin, and now humanity had been thrust into the center of that storm. The Council's influence might have been enough to keep the peace in other parts of the galaxy, but against a warlord of Turkin's caliber, their power would be meaningless. Earth was alone in this fight. As the ship made its way back to the Council's headquarters, the enormity of the situation began to sink in. There was no turning back now. The warning had been given, but Turkin's forces were already on their way. Earth was under threat, and no one knew how the humans would respond. Back on Earth, the situation was growing more dire by the day. The first signs of the approaching invasion came not in the form of an overwhelming fleet, but through subtle movements on the edges of the solar system. Unusual energy readings, strange fluctuations in the space surrounding Earth, and an increase in unidentified spacecraft activity. At first, the humans were unaware of the true scope of the threat, but General Sarah Ashford, a brilliant strategist and the leader of Earth's unified military command, was not one to be caught off guard. She had trained for this moment her entire life. The war had not yet begun, but Ashford was already preparing for the worst. Sarah Ashford wasn't like most military leaders. She had a deep understanding of both tactics and the human spirit. She believed that the true strength of humanity lay not in their weapons or military technology, but in their ability to improvise, to think outside the box, and to push the limits of what was possible. When Turkin's fleet arrived, they would find that Earth was not a planet to be underestimated. Ashford had already begun implementing new strategies, drawing on the vast network of human resources scattered across the globe. Earth's technological capabilities, though relatively primitive compared to the rest of the galaxy, were vast and rapidly growing. There were hidden military bases beneath the surface, secret weapons programs, and cutting-edge technology that the rest of the galaxy had no knowledge of. But Ashford knew that no matter how advanced their technology, the key to humanity's survival would be in their adaptability. The humans would have to fight like never before, and the strategy would have to be one of constant innovation, using every advantage they could find. She had seen firsthand how humans could pull together in times of crisis, how they could rise from the ashes of defeat and find a way to overcome any obstacle. Her thoughts were interrupted by a sharp, urgent signal from the command center. The message was clear. Turkin's fleet was entering Earth's solar system. The message, though brief, sent shockwaves through the command center. This was the moment that Earth had been preparing for. Sarah Ashford stood up, her mind racing as she quickly processed the information. She had trained for this moment, but now the time for theory was over. It was time for action. "We've known this day would come," Ashford muttered to herself, her voice resolute. "Now we make sure Turkin knows just how wrong he is." The response was immediate. Within moments, the human fleet began to mobilize. Ships previously hidden from view were brought to the surface, and new weapons systems were activated. Earth's military was far from the largest force in the galaxy, but it was efficient, determined, and more than capable of defending its home. Ashford had no doubt that humanity's ingenuity would be the key to their survival. As Turkin's fleet drew nearer, the Earth's response was swift. The human military deployed defensive systems at breakneck speed, setting up energy shields, hidden traps, and weapons systems designed to cripple any approaching fleet. Ashford had faith that, with the right strategy, they could buy enough time to mount a full defense. But as the hours ticked by, something strange began to happen. The human fleet, despite their best efforts, began to detect unusual signals. Something was moving in the dark corners of space, something much larger than the warlord's ships. Vraxis's warning had been clear, and though Turkin had ignored it, Earth's response would prove to be far more than he could ever have anticipated. What neither Turkin nor the Council had fully understood was just how connected Earth was to the rest of the galaxy. The fight for Earth. The atmosphere around Earth had become charged with a sense of urgency and tension. The countdown to an inevitable conflict had begun, and every minute that passed seemed to stretch endlessly before the coming storm. General Sarah Ashford stood at the helm of the human defense strategy, but even she could not fully prepare for the scale of the coming assault. The alien fleet, a vast and terrifying sight, was drawing nearer, its shadows casting a grim pall over Earth's once peaceful skies. The first signs of Turkin's invasion appeared when Earth's early warning systems detected a massive fleet entering the outer edges of the solar system. Long-range sensors had picked up the faintest signals, alien technology more advanced than anything Earth had ever encountered. Turkin's forces were approaching at breakneck speed, and soon, the small, fragile planet that had lived in isolation for centuries would find itself at the heart of an intergalactic war. Back in the command center, General Ashford looked over the holographic displays, her sharp eyes scanning the incoming data. Earth's military might was not vast when compared to Turkin's empire. His ships were enormous, their weapons powerful and destructive. But Ashford had always believed that humanity's true strength was in its ability to adapt and innovate under pressure. The odds were stacked against them, but that did not deter her. "We need to delay them," Ashford muttered under her breath as she looked at the map of the incoming fleet's path. "We have to slow them down long enough to give us time to strategize." The first step was to deploy Earth's new energy shield systems, an untested, cutting-edge technology developed in secret by a team of the best engineers and scientists Earth had to offer. The shields were powerful, but they had never been tested against a fleet of Turkin's scale. Would they hold, or would they collapse under the first wave of fire? The shield system was activated, and a visible translucent barrier flickered into place around Earth. It was an impressive sight, almost beautiful in its simplicity. But for General Ashford, there was no time to admire their work. She knew that every second counted, and she hoped that the shields would be enough to buy her the time needed for the next phase of the plan. Meanwhile, the human fleet, small in number but fierce in spirit, began to mobilize. Ships of all sizes, from fighters to freighters, were quickly repurposed for the coming battle. The human military was relying not on sheer firepower alone, but on precision, coordination, and their knowledge of Earth's terrain. They would use everything they had, every resource, every skill, to give Turkin a fight he would never forget. General Ashford addressed her officers, her voice steady but filled with a sense of purpose. "We may be outgunned, but we are not outmatched. Our strength lies in our ability to think on our feet, to use everything at our disposal. We will fight with every ounce of determination, every ounce of ingenuity, until the last ship has flown. Do not let them underestimate us. Earth will not fall today." The human fleet was divided into squads, each tasked with different missions. Some would engage the enemy head-on, drawing fire and keeping Turkin's forces distracted. Others would attack the weaker points in the alien ships, using stealth and surprise to gain an advantage. Ashford had studied Turkin's tactics in detail and knew that the warlord's overconfidence would be his greatest weakness. He would not expect the humans to be so resourceful or cunning. As the first wave of Turkin's fleet arrived at Earth's outer defense line, the energy shields flared under the force of the initial barrage. The alien ships were huge, battlecruisers that could level entire cities with a single shot. Their weapons were built for destruction, their purpose clear, to obliterate everything in their path. The shields held, but just barely. The incoming blasts sent ripples through the barrier, shaking the atmosphere and creating flashes of light that could be seen from Earth's surface. People across the planet watched in awe and fear as the battle unfolded before their eyes. The stakes had never been higher, and on the front lines, the human fleet engaged Turkin's ships with a ferocity that belied their size and technology. The alien warships fired their massive energy cannons, their beams streaking through the void of space. But the humans were not sitting idle. They had long ago learned how to use their planet's terrain to their advantage. Human ships darted between the asteroid fields that surrounded Earth, hiding in the debris and using the rocks for cover. Small fighter jets, nimble and fast, streaked across the sky, their weapons targeting the weak points in Turkin's massive vessels. The human pilots, trained for years, fought with unmatched bravery. They knew that their chances of surviving the battle were slim, but they were willing to risk everything to protect their home. The sounds of battle were deafening in the command center, each explosion, each close call, sending waves of anxiety through the officers and soldiers alike. In the midst of the chaos, General Ashford's voice came through the communication channels, calm and firm. "Keep the shields up as long as you can. We need every second. Those ships are coming, and we can't stop them alone. Prepare for Phase 2 of the plan." Phase 2 had been in the works for months, an experimental weapon designed to disrupt the systems of Turkin's fleet. It was a risky move, one that could either cripple the alien ships or backfire completely. But time was running out. If the shields fell, Earth would be defenseless. The weapon, an electromagnetic pulse generator capable of sending out waves that could scramble the control systems of the alien vessels, was deployed from Earth's surface. As it launched, a wave of energy rippled across the sky, creating a dazzling display of light. For a moment, it looked as though nothing had changed. But then, Turkin's fleet began to shake. Ships that had been charging full force toward Earth suddenly slowed, their systems malfunctioning, their weapons faltering. General Ashford's face lit up with the briefest flicker of hope. The weapon was working. Earth had a chance. But just as quickly as the hope had flared, it was extinguished by a new danger. Turkin had anticipated such a move. His warships were equipped with fail-safe systems, and the pulse generator's effects began to wear off. The humans had gained a temporary advantage, but the fight was far from over. Ashford's mind raced as the situation worsened. She had anticipated many outcomes, but not this. The tide of battle was constantly shifting, and yet even in the face of overwhelming odds, she was resolute. The battle for Earth was just beginning. She glanced at the map again, her fingers flying over the control panel. "Deploy the reserve fleets. We've bought ourselves a little time, but it won't last long. Get to the last phase of the defense plan now. We need to hit them harder." The final phase would involve bringing humanity's hidden allies into the fight. They had not been openly revealed to the Council or Turkin, but Earth was not as alone as it seemed. Firaxis had been right about one thing. Earth had allies. Some within the Council had long known that humanity's greatest strength was its ability to forge unexpected alliances. Now, it was time for those alliances to show their true power. As the human fleet fought bravely and the alien ships faltered, the next stage of the plan was set into motion. And it was there, in the midst of this chaos, that humanity's true potential would shine. For Earth's victory was not about raw firepower, but about something deeper, a belief that even the smallest, most vulnerable of species could rise up and stand against the tide of tyranny. The battle begins. The first full salvo from Turkin's fleet cut through the vastness of space with terrifying precision, a cascade of blinding light streaking across the void toward Earth's energy shields. The very fabric of the planet's defense quivered under the weight of the assault. The energy shields, though advanced, were not invincible. They had been designed to withstand intense pressure, but no one had expected the sheer size and ferocity of Turkin's armada. From Earth's surface, the sky lit up with flashes as the initial barrage hit the shield. The force of the impact sent shockwaves that rattled buildings, and those on the surface felt the tremors in their bones. The sky seemed to shudder with the power of the assault. General Sarah Ashford, sitting in the command center, watched the live feed, her face set in a determined mask. It was the moment of truth. The plan had to work. The shield flickered in places, cracks beginning to form as it absorbed the intense energy. But it was holding, just barely. Ashford exhaled a slow breath, her fingers tightening around the edge of the control panel. They had anticipated a heavy hit, but now it was clear that the true test had begun. Her next move would determine whether Earth had any chance of survival. "Keep the shield up," she ordered, her voice unwavering. "Full power to the central generators. We need every watt of energy. No one goes down without a fight." As Earth's defenses continued to hold, the human fleet launched into action, a mix of military ingenuity and sheer courage. General Ashford had drawn on every strategy she knew, using her fleet's speed and maneuverability to avoid the full brunt of Turkin's firepower. Small, agile fighter jets darted through space like flashes of light, weaving between the massive alien ships. They were outgunned, but their flexibility and cunning could make up for their lack of sheer firepower. The first few minutes were chaotic. The sky seemed filled with explosions, the glittering remnants of shattered ships floating in the cold expanse of space. Turkin's forces fired relentlessly, their weapons tearing through the void with ruthless efficiency. Yet for every human ship that fell, two more took its place. The humans were resilient, and they fought with the tenacity of a species that had everything to lose. "We've got a breach on the north side," shouted one of the command officers, her voice rising over the comms. "The shield's holding, but just barely. They're pushing us back." Ashford's mind raced as the situation unfolded. She had known from the beginning that it was going to be a tough battle, but now it was clear. Earth's survival depended on every decision made in the heat of this moment. Every second that passed, every strategic choice, would be a thread in the tapestry of victory or defeat. "We need to counterattack," Ashford said, her voice calm but sharp. "Activate the ion cannons. Prepare the secondary fleet for a flanking maneuver." It wasn't just about surviving Turkin's overwhelming firepower. It was about taking the fight to him. Ashford's plan had always been to fight on two fronts, hold the shield, and then hit Turkin's forces where they least expected it. The ion cannons, developed using experimental tech from Earth's brightest engineers, were their secret weapon. They couldn't compete with the raw power of Turkin's ships, but the ion blasts had a distinct advantage. They interfered with the energy systems of alien technology. If they could land a few good shots, it might just turn the tide of battle. As the ion cannons powered up, the ground beneath Ashford's feet seemed to hum with anticipation. On the tactical screen, the lines of advancing alien ships grew closer, their massive forms menacing in their approach. Earth's ships were spread thin, but their resilience and speed had so far given them the edge in this chaotic battle. The moment the ion cannons fired, a brilliant wave of energy erupted from Earth's defense lines, arcing across the sky like a bolt of lightning. The pulse of the cannon struck the heart of the alien fleet, sending ripples through Turkin's ships. Some faltered, their weapons flickering, their energy systems beginning to glitch. But Turkin, ever the strategist, had anticipated this. The warlord's fleet quickly recalibrated, their adaptive shields springing to life just in time to absorb the full force of the ion pulse. A few of the smaller vessels faltered, but the larger ships, those colossal behemoths that formed the backbone of Turkin's armada, sustained only minor damage. It was a blow, yes, but it wasn't enough to turn the tide of battle. "Status report," Ashford demanded, leaning forward into the tactical display. "Turkin's fleet is regaining momentum," came the voice of one of her officers. "We're taking fire from all sides now. They're adapting faster than we can handle. The fleet's being spread thin." Ashford's heart pounded. They had made an initial dent, but Turkin was nothing if not relentless. He had planned for every contingency, and his forces were advancing with terrifying speed. The Earth defense was barely holding, and the human fleet was being slowly worn down by the sheer scale and power of the alien forces. But this wasn't over yet. "Phase 2. Activate now," Ashford commanded. "Send the backup fleet. Prepare to engage with everything we have left." In the dark depths of space, a secondary fleet, hidden and unaccounted for, suddenly emerged from behind one of the gas giants that orbited Earth. These were ships that the Council had no knowledge of, ships that had been part of humanity's covert alliances, their existence kept secret to avoid drawing attention from the likes of Turkin. These ships, smaller but faster and equipped with advanced stealth technology, moved like shadows through space. They were Earth's trump card, an ace up the sleeve that only Ashford and a select few knew about. As the backup fleet joined the fray, Earth's forces gained a new edge. The alien fleet had been spread out, focused on Earth's defenses, and unable to anticipate the sudden appearance of the new ships. With lightning-fast precision, the stealth fleet struck at Turkin's ships, cutting through their lines with surgical efficiency. The tide of the battle began to shift. The humans were no longer just holding their ground. They were fighting back with everything they had, every ounce of strength, every drop of ingenuity. And Turkin, for the first time, began to realize that Earth was not the easy conquest he had anticipated. "We've got them on the run," one of Ashford's officers cheered. "Their formation is breaking apart. The humans are pushing them back." But Turkin was not easily defeated. As the human forces began to press their advantage, Turkin himself appeared on the battlefield. A massive warship, a fortress in space, emerged from behind the shadows of his fleet. It was his personal flagship, an imposing ship that dwarfed even the largest of his vessels. His forces were regaining their composure, and the battle had just entered a new phase. The warlord was preparing for his own personal assault. The moment Turkin's flagship entered the fray, the battlefield shifted once more. His ship unleashed an assault unlike anything Earth had seen before, an energy barrage that rained down upon the human fleet. Turkin had decided that subtlety was no longer necessary. He would crush Earth's forces with brute force. The explosions that followed were deafening, and the humans, despite their determination, were pushed back. The ion cannons had been knocked offline, and Earth's defenses were beginning to weaken under the constant pressure of the warlord's might. But Earth's forces were not done yet. They had survived this long, and they would not falter now. General Ashford's voice echoed through the command center, firm and commanding. A turning point. The battle was shifting, its rhythm almost like the ebb and flow of a tide. Earth's defenses had been put to the test in ways no one had anticipated, and while the human fleet had shown remarkable resilience, the situation was now more precarious than ever. General Ashford stood in the heart of the command center, surrounded by displays of flashing lights, chaotic battle reports, and the tension of a world holding its breath. Turkin's fleet, though slightly disorganized by the unexpected counterattack, was still formidable. His flagship, the enormous warship that bore his name and pride, loomed above the battlefield like a harbinger of doom. The battle had escalated far beyond the scope of the original strategy. What had been an attempt to hold back Turkin's overwhelming firepower had turned into a desperate struggle for survival. Earth's forces were dwindling. Their fleet had sustained heavy casualties, and despite their best efforts to fight back, Turkin's sheer size, firepower, and relentless pursuit were beginning to wear them down. Ashford's mind raced, her eyes scanning the readouts on the large tactical display. The human fleet, though fiercely determined, was beginning to buckle. The ion cannons, which had caused a brief disruption in Turkin's forces, were offline, damaged in the initial assault. The energy shields that had been humanity's last line of defense were now flickering and weakening under the pressure. Earth's soldiers, her fleet's brave pilots, were stretched thin, fighting with the fierce determination of a species that had never faced an enemy like this before. But even as the odds grew longer, something stirred deep within Ashford. It wasn't just the fight for survival anymore. It was the fight for humanity's place in the galaxy. The battle wasn't just about defending Earth. It was about proving that humans could stand alongside the other great civilizations of the galaxy, that they had earned their place among the stars. A sudden transmission interrupted her thoughts, a transmission that would change the course of the battle. It was a signal from an unknown source, coming through a secure channel. At first, Ashford hesitated. It could be a trick, another alien ruse, but something told her to listen. She had learned to trust her instincts in moments like this. She tapped the comms panel. "General Ashford," a voice said, calm and steady. "This is Counselor Vraxis of the Galactic Council." Ashford's eyes widened as she processed the name. Vraxis? the diplomat who had warned Turkin of humanity's strength. He had been with the delegation, the ones who tried to stop Turkin's invasion before it had begun. Ashford leaned forward, trying to make sense of the message. "What are you saying, counselor?" she asked, urgency creeping into her tone. "Are you telling me you've come to help? We need assistance now, not words." "We are coming, General." Vrax's voice came back, clearer now, with a note of hope. "We, the Council, have realized the mistake we made. We underestimated the potential of humanity. The galaxy has its eyes on Earth now, and we've learned that we were wrong to ignore your warnings. Reinforcements are on their way." Ashford's heart skipped a beat. It was a moment she had never expected, and yet, in that instant, the entire atmosphere of the command center seemed to shift. The Council, the very same assembly that had turned its back on Earth in the face of Turkin's threats, was now changing its stance. The message from Praxis was clear. Earth was no longer alone. Suddenly, a burst of energy shot across the tactical display, causing every officer in the room to look up in shock. It wasn't from Earth's ships, nor from Turkin's forces. It was something new, something different. A fleet, like a storm of light, materialized at the edge of the battlefield. Ashford's eyes widened as the ships came into view. They were sleek and unfamiliar, their design far beyond anything Earth had developed. These ships were built for speed and precision, and their markings were unmistakable. They bore the insignia of the Galactic Council. The new fleet arrived with terrifying precision, launching into action without hesitation. It wasn't just a few ships, it was a full-scale reinforcement, a powerful armada that surged toward Turkin's forces with the confidence of a force that knew it would not fail. The aliens, who had been so focused on Earth, seemed caught off guard. For a brief moment, the battlefield seemed to shift, as though Turkin's once steady hold on the conflict was being loosened. Ashford watched in stunned silence as the new fleet engaged Turkin's warships. The fight that had seemed so overwhelmingly in the aliens' favor was now turning into a battle of attrition. Earth's fleet, revitalized by the arrival of the Council's reinforcements, joined the fray, attacking from all sides, with the advantage of surprise on their side. Turkin, initially so confident in his dominance, now found himself under attack from two fronts. His flagship, a massive behemoth, attempted to reposition itself, but Earth's forces were already on the move. Small, agile ships darted past Turkin's defenses, firing at critical weak points in the alien vessels. "General Ashford, we're not done yet," one of her officers said, his voice filled with renewed energy. "The battle's turned. The Council's fleet is tearing through Turkin's outer lines." The tide was shifting. But Turkin, ever the fighter, was not one to be beaten so easily. As his fleet began to falter, he turned to his trump card, a weapon so powerful it had been kept hidden from the galaxy, an ancient weapon of mass destruction, a doomsday device capable of obliterating entire planets. The weapon was aboard his flagship, and it was now activated. "General," one of Ashford's advisors shouted, "Turkin's flagship is charging a weapon, an unknown energy source. It's massive. He's preparing to fire." Ashford's heart raced. The Council's fleet was making progress, but if Turkin succeeded in deploying this weapon, Earth would be wiped from existence. There was no time to think, no room for hesitation. "Prepare the remaining ships to launch a full assault," Ashford ordered, her voice sharp and commanding. "We need to stop that weapon before it's too late." In a final, desperate move, the human fleet launched everything it had left. Missiles, ion blasts, and energy pulses flew toward Turkin's flagship, aiming for the weapon's core. At the same time, the Council's fleet launched a simultaneous strike, cutting through the alien armada with the force of 1,000 storms. The combined power of the human and Council forces hit Turkin's flagship from all sides, breaking through its shields and causing massive explosions along its hull. But the weapon was still charging. In those final moments, Ashford knew that this was the moment where the fate of Earth would be decided. As the human fleet pushed forward, she could see the weapon, a massive core glowing with energy, preparing to fire. With one final, coordinated assault, Earth's forces fired everything they had at the weapon. Every ship, every laser, every pulse of energy, until it was all focused on one single point. The explosion that followed was cataclysmic. It tore through the heart of Turkin's flagship, and the immense weapon detonated, sending a shockwave that shook the battlefield. The Council's fleet pulled back as the explosion spread outward, and Turkin's flagship crumbled into space debris. The warlord's forces were thrown into disarray as his flagship, the symbol of his power, was destroyed. For the first time since the battle had begun, Turkin's fleet was in full retreat. The tide of war had turned.